Assemble! Stay dandy, baby. Greetings, fellow heroes. The Ace Guru has returned to review My Hero Academia, the anime series. We're right back on Season 4, and this review is going to be plus ultra sized because I'm going to be talking about 3 separate story arcs. That's how long I have been off the wagon of My Hero Academia. A lot of you guys have been hitting me up, Corey, why aren't you reviewing the anime series anymore? The fact of the matter is, I got busy, life got ahead of me, and I just got really behind on the show. But I've taken the time to watch all of the episodes and completely catch up right before we get to the very end of Season 4, and I'm very excited to talk about a lot of these episodes, in particular, the Cultural Festival arc, which, believe it or not, might actually be one of my favorite arcs from the entire series, and I'll get into that why in just a couple of minutes. But first and foremost, I just want to say thank you guys for continuing to follow me. If you want to help support the channel, please check out my PayPal and Patreon account. You'll find links for all that stuff in the description box below. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. In my absence of reviewing My Hero Academia, a couple of arcs have actually taken place. Some of them are pretty short. The first one being the Remedial course arc, which brings back Shoto Todoroki and Katsuki Bakugo as they complete their course and get back on track with their fellow students. And they're also going to be bringing back some classic characters from a previous season, not only getting to see the return of the Shiketsu students, none other than Inasa, and believe it or not, the real version of Kami. That's right, not the one who's actually a creepy clone from the League of Villains. And her personality is completely different. Whereas before she was incredibly confident and cool, the real Kami is, for a lack of better words, kind of stupid. But she does actually have an interesting quirk. We get to see it for the first time. Apparently she has the ability to create illusions, which only last for a very small amount of time. But this entire arc really only lasts for like 3 episodes and mostly consists of these students having to battle against kindergartners or young kids who are in elementary school. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I'm going to put it right out there for you. Least favorite arc of the entire series. There's not much to it. I mean, it's a 3-episode arc. It goes by really fast, but I have to be honest, it just was not grabbing my attention all that much. There really wasn't much to the arc at all, especially because it was really all about these older kids trying to control these younger ones who were going insane and making their teacher just go completely nuts, and it basically just de-evolved into eventually them fighting and then revealing all of their quirk powers to let them know that, hey, if you want to be a hero, you don't gotta be a loud, annoying asshole all the time. It just, I don't know, I just don't have a lot of feeling when it actually comes to this arc. The thing that I took away most from this was actually this really great scene between Endeavor and All Might, because now Endeavor has sort of been thrust into the #1 spot, and he doesn't quite know what he's doing, so he has to actually seek counsel from All Might. And this is all a lot of material that doesn't even get resolved until like the very end of this season, when they're starting to introduce this brand new story with Endeavor and another hero by the name of Hawks. More on that later, but this is the stuff that I really liked the most about this. That, and of course, we got the official confirmation that, of course, Night Eye is dead, they have his funeral, and Eri is now going to be under the protection of UA and their school. And that's basically it. That's all my thoughts about this arc, and yeah, like I said, I just didn't really care for any of it. That's just my thoughts. Let's move ahead to the next arc of the series, which was the entire Cultural Festival arc, and I have to be honest, going into this one right here, I was ready to hate it. And the only reason I was ready to hate it is because it was a cultural festival arc. Anyone who's ever watched any anime series which is set in a school will know that they always do a story arc about the cultural festival. And it's almost always the same exact thing. A bunch of kids coming together, working together, the power of friendship, and creating some sort of weird presentation to entertain all of their students, and that's basically it. My Hero Academia has the edge in the fact that it is a school of superheroes in training, so that immediately makes it a little bit more interesting, but what ultimately saves this arc is the fact that pretty much every single character in My Hero Academia is incredibly likable, especially the main characters in Class 1A. And like a lot of the other previous arcs of My Hero Academia, they seem to want to pick and pull certain characters to develop, and one of the biggest developed characters in this arc is none other than Kyokujiro, who has always been one of my favorite characters in the series, if only for the fact that her powers are incredibly unique. But here, her skills are really put to the test because they have to come up with an idea to entertain all of their fellow students, as well as sort of gaining back their trust and going through a lot of different scenarios of coming up with crazy ideas because everyone has their own idea. Kyoko decides that maybe they should put on some sort of skit or massive concert, and this can involve everyone at once, and this is where everybody sort of brings their strengths to the table. You have dancers, you have singers, you have people who can play instruments, you have people who worry about special effects, and it all comes together in a really fabulous ending. And that could be the arc right there, and it could be really entertaining all on its own. But they add something else to this arc that's really cool. Deku continuing to go through his training, and believe it or not, the introduction of two brand new villains who are incredibly intriguing. I'm speaking of none other than the Gentle Criminal and the Little La Brava. Like I said initially, I wasn't ready to like this arc at all. It didn't help that we were going through a cultural festival, something that I've seen in like 1,000 other anime, but now we're introducing a group of villains who are just goofy as hell. I honestly thought that this was a filler arc when it was actually starting. It just felt that way initially. However, Gentle Criminal and La Brava are some of the more interesting villains that I've actually seen from My Hero Academia. In fact, they kind of remind me of comic book villains from the 1960s and 70s, where they were bad guys, but they weren't bad guys. Insert Wreck-It Ralph Zangief clip here. What makes Gentle Criminal and La Brava interesting villains is the fact that they're not all about death and destruction. Gentle Criminal, as his name would imply, is kind of a sophisticated villain who's only looking for fame and an amazing reputation. He's a villain who's popular for having an online show, and he performs these massive, sort of crimes that don't necessarily hurt anyone and don't necessarily, take a lot of gold or money or steal anything. It's all about just being really flashy and super sophisticated, and that alone makes him already kind of intriguing. He does come across as kind of like a goofy Team Rocket-esque style of villain, but it's eventually when these two stories intersect that things actually start to get kind of serious. And it's also a great confrontation for Deku, the very first time in the series where he has to single-handedly take down a villain all by himself. And that alone made this pretty damn awesome. But wait, there's more. I'd say one of the most important aspects of this arc is actually about the rehabilitation of Eri. After the overhaul arc, this poor girl has just been through so much after having her body completely destroyed and repaired multiple times by overhaul, being left by her family, and unfortunately not being able to control her power. She's left in this constant state of basically suck. This is a girl who has never genuinely smiled in her life, never even had a happy memory. But after being saved by Mirio Togata and Deku, there is a chance for this girl to have some sort of redemption for her life. And that's when Deku and Mirio have the proposal of bringing Eri to the cultural festival, where she'll be able to have a good time and see a lot of amazing things, and see that there are some amazing people in this world who have the ability to change it for the better, and potentially she could smile for the very first time. And this is where the story with Gentle Criminal and La Brava actually comes up and becomes way more interesting, because Gentle Criminal's plan is he's going to perform the ultimate crime. He's going to sneak into UA High School at a time in the series where that's damn near impossible and where it will be seen as this amazing villainous act. Yet at the same time, he doesn't really want to do anything all malicious. He simply just wants to sneak into the place during their cultural festival when it's on complete lockdown. Usually these cultural festivals are actually open up to the public. Due to everything that's been going on with the villains, the school is just on complete lockdown. It is an event that is strictly just for the students themselves. So for him to actually pull this off, it has to be the perfect plan. It just so happens that during the big training for this massive concert that they're getting ready to pull off, Deku actually has to get some materials from a store early that morning before the presentation, and while he's on his way back to the school, he ends up running into Gentle Criminal. Knowing who he is through his famous videos that he sees online, he realizes that he has no choice but to stop him, and that leads to this amazing confrontation between these two characters. You see, Gentle Criminal is trying to perform the ultimate crime, and then you have Deku, who's doing everything in his power to prevent him from doing that, because one, it's going to shut down the cultural festival, and two, it will prevent Eri from from actually going there and having some sense of normalcy. So there's a surprising amount at stake here, even if it isn't a matter of life and death. And that leads to an amazing fight scene between Deku and the gentle criminal, which I thought was just going to be a massacre. I thought Deku was just going to punch him once and that was going to be the end of the day. But they do a good job of slowly building up what Gentle's actual abilities and quirks are. Gentle Criminal's quirk is known as elasticity. It basically allows him to make everything elastic and bouncy. And what's really cool about this is that it applies to quite literally everything. He can actually make the air itself elastic, sort of creating these sort of like invisible trampolines for both him and Brava to actually like use and escape with. That's how they're able to you sort of get rid of all of the evidence of them being a part of these crimes and to escape from the cops and the other heroes. And the setting that they use for this battle is so fantastic. I love that Deku and Gentle Criminal are fighting in this building that's under construction with all of these massive beams that are just bouncing all over the place, allowing Gentle to sort of like bounce all over around and actually give Deku a pretty interesting fight. Deku, of course, is more physically powerful. There's no doubt in my mind that he would be able to take this guy out in one single shot, but he has to be really tactful in what he's doing because throughout the course of the series, his power has just gotten ahead of him. He can destroy everything in like one massive punch. And one of the keystones of this arc is him learning how to use some brand new distance-based attacks that are concentrated and won't destroy everything around him. And thanks to actually getting some help from Mei Hatsume, he has these brand new gloves which allows him to sort of like flick and shoot these big attacks towards Gentle Criminal and Brava without destroying everything around him. It's really damned riveting. They eventually make their way to the actual grounds of UA High School where things really get intense because this is when Brava actually reveals a lot more about her abilities. Her quirk is the ability of love. She can actually empower people the more that she actually loves them, and this gives Gentle Criminal like a massive power boost, which leads to, honestly, a pretty exciting and amazing action scene of watching Gentle sort of bounce around, constantly going up against the speed of Deku, who is, of course, eventually able to defeat him. However, this battle is intensified a lot simply due to the backstories of these characters. It's what really made it very riveting for me. Gentle Criminal might come across as like a super goofy villain, but his entire backstory is shockingly similar to Deku's. While he is a character who indeed does have a quirk, he's kind of a failure. They go through his entire past of him being not a very smart student and trying to use his powers to save someone one day, which actually ends up hurting them and getting him sort of ostracized from society and his family. He basically is a failure as a hero and as a person. It's not until he decides to be this amazing criminal where he finally starts to see himself as an amazing individual and he's trying to build up sort of his reputation again from the start. It's then when he meets Brava that things become really interesting. Brava is just as interesting too because she looks like sort of like this just dumb sidekick kind of character, but she's surprisingly deep as well. And I'm not really sure what the deal is like with her age or anything, but apparently she's in love with Gentle Criminal and they go into her past a little bit about how she was a middle schooler who tried to declare her love for someone and she was rejected, and she sort of let herself go and only just spent time in her room online and on the computer and even contemplated suicide. That wasn't until she found Gentle Criminal's videos, became completely enamored with him, fell in love with him, and decided to help him in forming a website, making his videos, and of course helping him in his great capers. These two characters work really well together, and they're sort of like the social misfit villains of this entire arc. And that alone made them a little different than some of the other villains that we've seen from My Hero Academia, whereas the previous ones have all been deathly serious, with Tomura Shigaraki, All for One, and Overhaul. Seeing villains like this is kind of what made this arc for me, and it was sort of like a breather after all of the craziness that was the Overhaul arc. Again, getting back to Gentle Criminal, he's one of those villains that's sort of like the evil version of Deku. Like, this is what could have happened to Deku if he didn't have proper training or never attained his quirk. He could have ended up just like this. And that's what made this entire fight so amazing. Deku even tells him that he is the hardest villain that he has ever fought in his entire life. He doesn't mean it like in a physical sense. He just realizes that Gentle Criminal has his very own hopes and dreams, just as Deku has, and by defeating him, he's completely crushing him all at the same time and sort of stopping all of his progress. it's surprisingly deep for what comes across as an almost filler-like arc, especially considering how short it is and how it's mostly played for laughs with everything going on with the cultural festival in the background. But honestly, it just works. I don't know how this is possible, but I ended up enjoying this arc way more than the freaking Overhaul arc. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed that one quite a bit. Mostly for the ending with the League of Villains coming in and reestablishing how incredibly evil they were. But I don't know what it was here. Maybe it's just the fact that it is full of all of my favorite characters. It's not too often that we get an arc in the series which involves every single student, and everybody gets time to shine here, and that's what really made it so fantastic. I loved spending time with all of these characters, and I absolutely loved the big concert that they actually ended up pulling off at the very end, which was only amplified even more because the battle that Deku has with Gentle Criminal is all like under this like time constraint where he has to defeat him and stop him before the cultural festival can be interrupted, and also so that he can make it to his big concert so that Eri can see it. And, you know, this is one of those scenes that, of course, is going to go down as legendary because it's really flashy and crazy and fun. It's also great because we get to see the students actually open up to 1A for the very first time, and we also get to see that Eri is having the time of her life. At first being a little reluctant to be in this school with all these crazy characters, when she sees this concert, she smiles for the first time. And that moment where Mirio sees that and he starts to cry, man, it just hit me right here. It was a powerful moment. Now, of course, this isn't going to erase everything that's happened in her past. There's still a lot of room for her to grow as a character, and it looks like we're going to see a lot of that in the future. As soon as this arc ends, things immediately kind of start to get serious a little bit again, as we get to see that Japan is getting ready to have their ranking of the top 10 heroes. And this means we're going to be seeing a lot of returning classics as well as a lot of new characters. And we also get to see the return of one character who's been built up quite a bit, a guy who goes by the name of Hawks. He's a character that's been associated with Fumikage, and he is an interesting character to say the least. I can't quite get a read on him quite yet. He just kind of comes across as this super young, arrogant, powerful hero. And he's basically number 2. Endeavor, of course, is now number 1, who's sporting a brand new outfit, which is just, let's face it, it's badass. It looks really awesome here. And his brand new attitude after talking with All Might simply is not to boast too much, but just to tell everybody, just watch me. That's how I'm going to be the number 1 hero. The other heroes that they bring in are kind of interesting. We get to see some new ones, some of which I think are going to be really interesting. There's this one big samurai guy. There is this quite literally a washing machine superhero, which I believe is just called Wash Wash. It looks like a friggin' Mega Man villain. It's hilarious. There's this one bunny girl who looks like she's going to be incredibly badass. I've definitely got my eye on her. What is my obsession with bunny girls? I have no idea. And even a few others get to return, like Ryukuyu. You get Edshot coming in. Kamui Woods is making his way in the world. There's a lot of returning and classic new heroes here, and it's a really exciting scene. But it's all basically just sort of the appetizer before the main course. It's all about Hawks and Endeavor in this current arc here. Hawks is doing some investigation and learning that the Nomu somehow are actually going to be returning, and he wants Endeavor's help to actually take them down. He brings Endeavor to his hometown, where we actually get to see Hawks in action, which is great. He's sort of like the man on the street hero, saving people inadvertently constantly. And he tells Endeavor that he's been hearing rumors of the fact that these Nomu are actually going to be returning. And as this is all happening in a conversation, suddenly they're both attacked by this one that is a highly advanced one by the name of High End, who's released by none other than Dobby. And the episode ends with Endeavor getting ready to have this massive fight with the Nomu, which looks like is going to actually end this entire season right here. It looks like it's all going to end with like an epic battle, and that's the way that you end a season, ladies and gentlemen. That's the way you make it exciting. And man, I'm just so excited for all of that stuff right there. But the fact that Dobby is involved is also kind of interesting. One of my personal theories, and probably the theory of a lot of other people, is that Dobby is somehow related to Endeavor and the Todorokis. I mean, the fact that he has firepower and kind of resembles some of the people from that family, especially the hairstyle, there has to be some sort of connection here. I mean, we've definitely seen that type of thing when it comes to related quirks in the series, but man, there's something else going on here that's really strange. And like I said, the fact that the season's going to end with Endeavor actually having to prove being the number 1 hero, and he told everybody, just watch me. Now he's definitely got his very own freaking stage to show the world what he is capable of. And the preview made it look like things are just going to be awesome. What's the rundown on all of these episodes? Man, there is just so much more that I could talk about. The fact that I'm talking about like entire arcs in general and large storylines, I'm probably missing out on some big details. Like the fact that the wild pussycats return, which is really great. Even Ragdoll is here. She doesn't have her quirk anymore, but she's still in high spirits and still going to be working with the group, which is great. I'm glad that her personality was not completely destroyed after all of the events that were going on with All for One. That was really great. I also love how they're subtly bringing up this other brand new group in the series, which is called the Meta Liberation Army. They're basically another group of villains in the show that have slowly been popping up, and they keep talking about them here, and I'm not quite sure what their deal is going to be, but I have a feeling they're probably going to be like maybe the next villainous group of the show. It's kind of like how when they started to bring in Overhaul and his team at the end of the last season, now they're starting to slowly introduce these characters. They haven't really done much of anything. There was one guy who got stopped by Hawks in his hometown in one of the episodes in a very funny scene, but otherwise, that's all there really is to this right now. But I'm very interested to see where all of that is going to go. Like I said, I glossed over a lot of details and everything that's actually been going on in all of these episodes, but man, this is actually, in my opinion, some of the strongest material, and maybe it's watching it all at once that made me like it so much. Maybe if I only watch these episodes like 1 week at a time, I might not be enjoying it as much, but man, I'm loving everything here. The Cultural Festival arc was one that was poised to make me hate it, and it ended up making me love it for all of the amazing characters of the main cast in Gentle Criminal and Brava, who I thought were just going to be throwaway, nonsensical, stupid villains. And you know what? I want them to return. The possibility of them returning is also really freaking great. Their backstories were incredibly tragic, and it tied so well into Deku's overall training and his story with everything going on in the Cultural Festival as well. Basically, what I'm saying is that was a really tight and well done arc. I loved it. It was musical, it was action-packed, and it was just plain fun. And it was exactly what was needed after the Overhaul arc. The Remedial course I can do without. Hell, you can practically skip that arc and you're not going to miss anything. Of course, you might miss the fact that Kami is here, and that's about it. And they even give a little bit of a characterization to Yuga Aoyama, a character that has always been one of my least favorite, but now I love the creepy little stalker. That guy's great. He's hilarious, and he actually acts as sort of like the disco ball during the big, like, cultural festival. I could make a whole video just talking about, like, what all the students do during, like, the giant concert. Like, that entire scene was just perfect in my eyes. I really did love it. But this review's going on way too long. I'm going to go ahead and break it down my arc here. Remedial Chorus, I'm giving it like a 2 out of 5. That's just my opinion. Yours might differ. Sound off in the comment section below. Cultural Festival, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I really, really liked it. It felt maybe a little too long in some parts, but for the most part, everything here was really solid, and it seemed really unimportant at first, but then transformed into something else, which ended up hitting me a lot harder than somehow the Overhaul arc. And it also sort of like resolved some of the incidents from that arc with the introduction of Eri actually going to the school and now being a part of UA. She's going to be under watch by all of them. With her horns slowly growing back, she might be able to learn her powers, give Mirio his abilities back. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. And then, of course, the introduction of this Endeavor and Hawks arc, which, you know, I'm a fan of action. I'm so excited to see that final episode of the season of Endeavor just going all out and fighting in his brand new suit. Hopefully we'll get to see Hawks do something cool. This brand new Nomu looks really creepy and disturbing. I'm just really excited. I'll have to give that one a final rating when we get to the final episode. Point is, I'm just excited to see how all this is going to go, and it gets me even more excited for the eventual Season 5 of the series, which is probably going to be coming in 2021. But for now, I'm just enjoying all of it. But I really want to hear your thoughts about it. Everything that happened in these arcs, whether it be the Remedial course, Gentle Criminal, La Brava, the entire Cultural Festival, favorite moments, things you liked, things you didn't like, what you think is going to happen in the big battle between Endeavor and High End, the brand new superpowered Nomu, what you want to see from the rest of the season and beyond. Let's discuss all of it in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos and discussions just like this one. If you want to go the extra mile in supporting this channel, aside from watching my videos, you can check out my PayPal and Patreon account. You'll find links for all that stuff in the description box below. Thank you all again for watching. I'll see you all next time, and as always, plus ultra, baby.